frequent question I usually get asked is, how do I design a character? I also get comments on how well thought out and fleshed out my characters are in terms of backstory, development, and everything else. So I'm going to tell you or show you how my development process is. Now, just before we start, I'm going to say that character design and development sometimes can take a really short amount of time, but other times can take a really long time because you're not quite sure of what design to go for. This was particularly the case in this instance when I was creating my character Hide Oshiro. Now, I started off this process knowing that I wanted a new male OC because I have loads of female OCs. From the start, I knew I wanted him to be of Japanese descent, or at least a little bit of Japanese descent. The designs start off in early 2016, I think it was around the beginning of March sort of time, and around that time I had actually rewatched Tokyo Ghoul for the umpteenth time. I was pretty inspired by Tokyo Ghoul, and you can kind of see that it's very obvious in these early designs. Here is one thing that you need to remember. First, initial sketches do not have to be perfect. You can sketch in pen. It actually is ideal to sketch in pen because any ideas that you have can't be rubbed out and you could use them for future projects, or you could incorporate the designs later on. Even at this early stage, I was very dead set on about fleshing out a design because initial sketches can be sometimes too rough to see clearly. So I sketched out the rough design as a slightly neater version, and I came up with this. Now, the one thing that I noticed straight away was it was way too complicated for its own good. Another thing people kind of mistake with character design is making it too complex. There was just too much going on in this character design for my liking. As you may have noticed, this video is not really a huge tutorial based one, but it is showing you the pitfalls and the successes that I had throughout this development process and what I went with and what I didn't go with during Hide's design. With this design, there is such a thing as overdone in like the culinary world, and this would just be burnt. The amount of detail, it's just completely overdone. The major character design tip here would be less is definitely more, and that also stands true for colour palettes as well. In mid-2016, I thought more so about Hide's age. Now, Hide in the previous one was more older, so I decided, you know what, let's try and make him younger. During mid-2016, there are some design elements that I did keep. I also changed his powers because in the early stages of development, he had the powers of sewing. If you don't know, all of my characters have powers, so I thought, what about sewing? But I changed it to technology very, very quickly. I thought that Hide could be the son of an inventor. It was very interesting to see my development through this stage. He also had a bandana, and in some iterations I thought I would keep it, but in this sense I don't think it was helping for that age factor. I thought he looked a bit too young for what I wanted. The important thing to remember about Hide's development process is that it took place over the course of over a year. This was due to a very hectic university schedule and also other plans over the summer holidays as well. It didn't work out well for designing a new character, and plus I had lots of other characters to deal with anyway. Hide's development took a complete roadblock. I had no idea which way to go with his design or which direction to take him in until about November-December 2016, when I added someone to his development and story that changed up everything and made me think differently about his design. Big parts about characters are how they interact with each other, and that is completely the design flaw that I went through. I had no idea who to add to his story that would actually make a bit of sense. I actually looked for quite a long time to try and find artwork from around this time, but I really couldn't find anything until I got to early 2017. Around the same time as doing Hide's development, I was also considering Daphne's development. Daphne, if you don't know, is my OC Jalal's little sister, who supposedly died in most of the timelines. But actually having it set in an alternate universe was actually a way to help me along with the story and how the character interactions would go along. It also helped me establish Hide's age, because I had no idea if I was still going to go for a younger Hide or an older Hide, and Daphne really did help me out with that, because it made me think about where I wanted Hide's age to be. I wanted Hide's age to be somewhere in between Jalal's and Daphne's ages, most likely closer to Daphne's, but slightly older. A little tip on character design that I always kind of say to myself is that, does this character look the same as other characters I've created? Is there similarities? What are the differences? Just comparisons between your own characters isn't really a bad thing. It makes you realise what you've done the same and what you've done differently, and it really helps you to improve on what you really want to put in the character design. I think the best way of doing character design is asking yourself so many questions about what this character is going to be like. What's the character's name? What are they going to wear? What are they going to look like? How are they going to interact with other OCs that you have? What is their personal clothing style? What is their colour scheme? What are they into? Hobbies? Do they have a part-time job? Do they have everything? So it's basically kind of like personal questions, and you're treating them like a proper human being even though they're a fictional character. Give them a personality. Give everything that you think this character should need. Go in detail. You can be as detailed as you want to be with it. My art friend here on YouTube, Canary Witch, actually goes into so much detail. She knows what's on their fingertips, and she has designed them very, very thoroughly. So if you want some inspiration, her work is art goals. Your OCs can actually be personal to you because they actually can reflect your emotions, your personality, different parts. To give you an example, my OC, Melissa, is my fangirling kind of OC. She loves life. She is a happy version of me that I love to be. Loki is my sarcastic sense of humour. My character Jalal represents for me that I can actually learn from my mistakes and be a better person for it. Pain and tragedy do not have to be your defining factor. That's what Jalal means to me. Back to Hide and Daphne though, I really wanted to make sure that these two characters actually shared a dynamic, and I wanted to make their personalities so that they would actually connect more. Now originally I wanted Hide and Daphne to both star in a comic. Now I don't know if that's still gonna happen. I still have an idea in my head that's actually quite an interesting plot point, but it's something that might end up a thing, but it might not, and I might just share the idea at some point. I dare say I probably won't get around to it until after university is finished, because this year when I go back at the beginning of October for my third year, it is my final year. Daphne and Hide's dynamic is very interesting because you have Daphne, who is curious, she's naive, she's cutesy, that kind of thing, whereas Hide is smart, but he gets very flustered very easily. He is a perfectionist. He just wants to do everything right, yet is quite clumsy at the same time. I had a pretty difficult time trying to decide how I wanted to draw Hide, and that actually really made it difficult to come up with a colour design for him, because I didn't want to mess it up, I didn't want to do it wrong, and so I decided, let's start with Daphne, because she has helped me through Hide's development. So I gave Daphne a colour scheme that was very muted and kind of pastel as well. So I thought that would kind of go with Hide and just make it more muted, make it also pastel but with splashes of colour here and there. Throughout the development process of Hide, I really thought that the skateboard or hoverboard would actually go very, very well with him. He could use it as a transportation device, kind of like a normal skateboard. And it also has other elements to it. It can do other things because he's an inventor. So there are up close and more detailed kind of views of his accessories. So before I finalize any sort of color scheme for Hide, I thought that maybe I want to change up his hairstyle. Do I want to change his hairstyle? And this was a very much last hurrah of character design before I said to everybody, look, here's my character, he's official, look at his design, he is pretty. Well, at least I think so. The thing you should know about me is I'm incredibly indecisive, so that is kind of why character design for me takes so long. Not only did I have doubts about the hairstyle, but I also had doubts about his name, but in the end I decided to go with Hide, and Hide was actually just a placeholder name. His last name originally was Ayato, but I changed it due to the fact that somebody else already had an OC with a similar name, and I didn't really want to have him have the same name as another OC. While I was doing one of my live streams, somebody actually suggested that Hide looked like he was Swedish, or had that kind of Swedish look to him, and I thought that that was a really, really good idea. So I actually decided in the end to make him half Japanese and half Swedish, so that would actually make a bit of sense. I also saw Hide as more of a type of big brother rather than a little brother, so I actually gave him 2 twin younger siblings, Maya and Volta. Now that I've explained the process of Hide's development, I'm actually going to go into more tips and tricks. Now, I might actually mention some tips and tricks that I've already done throughout the process of Hide's development, but it just brings light to the fact that I wish I would have known about these tips and tricks when I was a younger artist, starting out and learning. The first tip should be common sense, but some people don't do it. I've known some people to leave this step out. Do your research. Say if you are creating an OC that is steampunk themed, or the style of it is steampunk, research into it, because 9 times out of 10, there are so many different references out there, and you could be going off of one thing. Make sure you get all your facts straight, and you know what you're talking about, and you know what you're getting yourself into when you're designing around a certain theme. The next tip is all about referencing. You need to reference things. If you do not know what something looks like, reference it. It's not cheating to see what something looks like. And that is a common misconception about references. A tip that I mentioned earlier towards the beginning of the video is less is more. This should be key. Overcomplicating designs for the sake of it is not good. You can put yourself in for more work than is definitely needed, especially if your character design is for a comic or any kind of story-based illustration series. The statement less is more definitely rings true also with color palettes as well. I've seen so many people add rainbows to their characters that don't belong where they should do. But as I've said in the past, this is something I've been guilty of. Like the oversaturation of colours. Just tone it down. Tone down the colours. You do not need really, really saturated colours. In fact, it just makes it look like you're more of a beginner. I wish I would have known this when I was like 13 and starting out here on the internet doing characters and all that. I wish I would have known this. Another thing I said before is that quick sketching. Sketching quickly can actually help you get your ideas down as fast as possible. It can also help you be more confident if you decide to quick sketch in pen, because of the limitation without erasing. It's forcing you to be more confident with your lines and where you put them. The next point is to think about the personality of your character. Think about their strengths, their weaknesses, what they do, and everything else about your character, as well as how they interact with other characters that you have. Also, think about your character's backstory. Sometimes your backstory can actually affect the way your character looks and their appearance, as well as the way they act and their personality. And that's actually all the tips that I have, or that I can think of, because I don't usually do tutorial videos very often. This isn't really a tutorial, it's kind of like how I go through the process of creating a character. Sometimes I decide to make the backstory first, sometimes I decide to make the design first. It's all about how it comes at the time. It can depend on how I'm feeling. It can depend on many different factors that are just personal. So I actually hope you found this video somewhat helpful. If you like this video, please remember to like this video, and if you want to, you can subscribe and even ring the little bell. I usually live stream every Saturday, and if the bell is rang, that you will actually get a notification if YouTube actually decides to work for once. So I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys!